For privacy reasons, the names of individuals involved in this case have been changed. Stay tuned. A young couple collecting debts. A house in the middle of a peaceful town. A seemingly harmless promise. But just a few hours later, one person disappeared without a trace, and the other was locked in a steel box like something out of a nightmare, where there was no way out, no light, only the cold air of death hovering around him. Behind the gentle appearance of a butcher is a terrifyingly cruel plan, accompanied by professional butchering skills used for bloody purposes. This is not just a murder, but a mental torture, a game of life and death. And it all starts with a box, where every unsolved mystery contains secrets that want to be revealed. Step into the darkness and explore them with us. Don't hesitate to leave a like as an encouragement for us. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell to update the most classic cases. In August 1996, a young couple from Texas, Daniel Myers and his girlfriend, Lisa Carter, made their way to the small, quiet town of Moss Point, Mississippi. The trip, which seemed like a routine errand at first, would end up being a nightmare that neither of them could have imagined. The purpose of their visit was straightforward. Daniel had lent a significant sum of money to a man named Thomas Reed, a local butcher, whom he had met through a previous business transaction involving drugs. Daniel was determined to get the money back. Little did they know, Thomas had other plans entirely. Thomas Reed was a man of few words, someone who blended into the background of the small community. He owned a modest butcher shop and lived alone in a secluded house tucked away in a remote part of town. To outsiders, Thomas appeared to be a harmless, introverted man who spent most of his time working and staying out of the public eye. But beneath his seemingly unremarkable exterior, Thomas was hiding a dark and twisted secret, one that would soon turn the lives of Daniel and Lisa upside down. On the surface, everything about their meeting appeared to be ordinary. When Daniel and Lisa arrived at Thomas's house, Thomas greeted them with a calm demeanor, and the conversation began on familiar, mundane terms. They spoke about the money Daniel was owed, and Thomas acted as though he was willing to settle the debt. However, the moment Daniel and Lisa stepped inside Thomas's home, the atmosphere began to shift subtly. Thomas had carefully crafted a plan that would soon take a deadly turn. While Daniel and Lisa were unaware, Thomas had no intention of paying back the money. He had already decided that the best way to eliminate his debt and any potential threat to his freedom was to kill Daniel. For Thomas, this was not just about the money. It was about eliminating anyone who could expose his illegal activities or disrupt his life. His criminal past, which included involvement in drug deals and shady business practices, made him paranoid and desperate to avoid being caught. To cover his tracks, he needed to remove Daniel permanently. Thomas had prepared for this moment. His house, though unassuming from the outside, held all the tools necessary for what was about to unfold. The basement, a grim and foreboding place, was equipped with a steel table and various sharp implements, all of which Thomas used for his work as a butcher. But in this case, they would serve a much darker purpose. After a brief conversation, Thomas excused himself, claiming that he needed to retrieve the money from another room. This moment of distraction was part of his strategy to lull Daniel and Lisa into a false sense of security. When Thomas returned, he was no longer holding cash. He was carrying a handgun. Before Daniel could react, Thomas shot him at point-blank range. The bullet struck Daniel in the chest, instantly killing him. The shock and horror of the moment left Lisa in a state of paralysis, unable to comprehend what had just happened. In the chaos that followed, Thomas dragged Daniel's lifeless body to the basement, where he began to dismember it. As a butcher, he was no stranger to handling dead animals. But this was something far more grotesque. Using the tools he had at hand, Thomas methodically cut Daniel's body into pieces, taking careful measures to ensure that no part of it would be identifiable. He placed the dismembered remains into large plastic bags, which he then disposed of in the nearby Pascagoula River, believing that the fast-moving waters would carry away any trace of his crime. Meanwhile, Lisa, who had been left in shock, was still reeling from the violent loss of her boyfriend. She was soon pulled from the room, and Thomas, cold and calculating, turned his attention to her. Fearing that Lisa might be a witness to the murder, Thomas decided that she too had to be eliminated. He tied her up, gagged her, and locked her inside a large freezer in a shed behind the house. The freezer was an insidious form of imprisonment, and Lisa was trapped inside, unable to escape. For the next several days, Lisa endured unimaginable suffering. The freezer was dark and suffocating, and the cold temperature made it difficult for her to breathe. Every time Thomas opened the freezer door, he would mock her, telling her that no one would ever find her and that she would die in the freezing darkness. Despite her physical and emotional torment, Lisa refused to give up. She clung to the hope of survival, her will to live driving her to think of ways to escape. On the morning of the fourth day, after many days of being imprisoned in the cold darkness of the metal box, Lisa Carter was almost completely exhausted. She had no sense of time, only the cold piercing her skin, hunger, thirst, and fear that numbed her mind. Every time Thomas opened the lid of the box, she had to prepare herself for cold threats or contemptuous looks. But on that fateful morning, he seemed to be subjective or simply too confident, forgetting to lock the box after checking her. Lisa realized it immediately. In that moment, her survival instinct rose stronger than any pain. Despite her numb and exhausted body, she gathered all her remaining strength, put both hands on the edge of the box, and pushed hard on the heavy metal lid. After a few seconds of struggling, the lid swung open with a groan. She rushed out like a panicked animal that had just escaped from an iron cage. Without thinking, Lisa plunged into the bushes behind the house, letting the branches tear at her skin. She had no shoes, no direction, but she knew that if she stopped or turned around, she would die. She ran through a trail, through dry, burnt grass, and onto a dirt road. The road was rocky. Each step, a new cut, blood staining her feet. But she didn't stop. In the distance, the lights of a small gas station loomed, the first sign of life after hell. Lisa nearly collapsed when she reached the door, pushing and banging, her mouth stammering incoherent words. The gas station attendant, upon seeing her, was stunned for a moment before calling the police. Less than 15 minutes later, Moss Point police arrived. Lisa was rushed to the hospital, severely dehydrated, with multiple open wounds, and in a state of panic. After receiving IV fluids and medical care, she gradually regained consciousness and began to recount the entire incident, in detail, clearly down to every moment of the nightmare she had just experienced. That same afternoon, after Lisa Carter's statement, Moss Point Police, in coordination with the Mississippi Department of Criminal Investigation, quickly issued a search warrant for Thomas Reed's home. Although it was initially just an unofficial missing person report, Lisa's chilling and detailed testimony led authorities to immediately assume that this could be one of the most serious murders ever committed in the area. Around 6 p.m., an armed task force raided the small house deep in a quiet residential area on the outskirts of Moss Point. The house was silent. The curtains were drawn. From the outside, it looked like an ordinary house, a fact that made many residents in the area shiver when they learned what happened inside. After breaking down the door, the police searched the entire area. In the basement, they quickly discovered a room hidden behind a thick curtain, where a strong, unpleasant fishy smell emanated. Here they found a large steel table with traces of human blood, which had been cleaned but still had red stains in the small grooves, a set of scalpels, a handsaw, and many specialized tools used in the butchering profession, the kind of equipment that a person who is not a professional butcher would hardly own. Used rubber gloves, blood-stained gloves, and red-soaked clothing were thrown into a plastic bin. Stains of blood were still left on the walls and on the tiled floor. The DNA sample later matched Daniel Myers. In the garage, the police found a large metal box, the same one in which Lisa Carter had been held for the past 4 days. Inside the box were several strands of long hair and some dried blood, clear signs that it was not just an old box, but a place to hold people. With information from Lisa's testimony and the scene, authorities expanded the search area. Lisa recalled hearing the sound of running water and the smell of rotting flesh every time Thomas opened the back door. That led the investigation team to the Pascagoula River area, about 3 miles from the house. After 2 days of searching with the help of dogs and local volunteers, police discovered several large black garbage bags tied tightly, scattered along the riverbank and in the bushes. When these bags were opened, inside were clearly separated human body parts, including the torso, limbs, and head, wrapped in layers of plastic and cloth to reduce the smell. The body parts had begun to decompose, but were still clear enough for forensic experts to identify the body. Fingerprints, tattoos, and dental records later confirmed that the victim was Daniel Myers. The case was immediately escalated to first-degree murder with a particularly serious element. Authorities tracked down Thomas Reed and found him on his way out of the state, carrying a few belongings and some cash. He was arrested on Highway 90, driving toward Alabama. At the time of his arrest, Thomas appeared strangely calm, did not resist, and did not ask why he was being arrested. He also had a map in his car that marked several areas of the swamp, which led investigators to believe he had planned to destroy additional evidence or flee through the woods. In addition to Thomas, his brother-in-law, Benjamin Lowe, was also arrested as an accessory. Evidence showed that Benjamin had been present at the scene at the time of Daniel's disappearance, and traces of his DNA were also found on the tape and plastic bag used to wrap the body. After the body bags were collected from the banks of the Pascagoula River, they were taken to the Mississippi State Forensic Center for examination and identification. There, forensic experts began to reconstruct and identify the remains. Initially, through fingerprints and dental records, investigators were able to positively identify the remains as belonging to Daniel Myers. However, what shocked the entire forensic team was the level of brutality and high technique with which the victim's body was handled. The report said, the cuts were very clean and precise, indicating that the perpetrator had knowledge or experience in human anatomy or had worked in the slaughter industry. The bones were severed with mechanical tools, such as electric saws or sharp hand saws, not spontaneously, but premeditatedly. Some body parts had been soaked in chlorine and lime solutions, possibly to slow down the decomposition process or destroy DNA evidence. Traces of high doses of sedatives were found in the victim's stomach, suggesting that he had been poisoned before being killed, making it unlikely that he would have put up a fight. These findings were consistent with Lisa Carter's account that Thomas had been very well prepared, as if he had done this before, and further supported the theory that this was not the first time Thomas had committed such a heinous act. After his arrest, Thomas Reed was taken to the Moss Point police station for questioning. During the first hours, he appeared eerily calm, showing no emotion, even asking for coffee and cigarettes while speaking to investigators. During his initial interview, Thomas denied any involvement in the incident. He claimed that Daniel and Lisa had never been to his house and that he didn't know where they went. When questioned about the blood, the dismembered body, and Lisa's testimony, Thomas began to remain silent on the advice of his public defender. However, after several days in custody and when confronted with a barrage of irrefutable evidence, including fingerprints, DNA, witness testimony, gas station video, and security cameras near the Pascagoula River, Thomas finally confessed to part of the crime. However, he gave a contradictory and illogical statement.
I didn't try to kill anyone. Daniel got mad and attacked me first. I was defending myself. After that, things got out of hand.
As for the dismembered body, Thomas said blankly,
I didn't know what else to do. I just wanted to get rid of it, so I wouldn't go to jail.
What was most outrageous was that when asked about locking Lisa in a metal box for 4 days without water or food, he simply shrugged and said,
I was going to release her after a few days, if she kept quiet.
Court-appointed forensic psychologists later assessed that Thomas showed signs of antisocial personality disorder, characterized by apathy, lack of remorse, and manipulative behavior, indifferent to the pain of others. When he was led into the courtroom, Thomas Reed appeared strangely calm. He wore an orange prison uniform and walked slowly but calmly, He did not bow his head, did not show any remorse, and even glanced around the room with cold eyes, as if observing a play in which he was the main character. Throughout the trial, Thomas showed almost no emotion, especially when Lisa Carter stepped up to the witness stand to recount in detail what had happened to her being locked in a metal box without food or water, enduring violence, and waiting for death every day. Thomas remained expressionless. Occasionally, when Lisa burst into tears, people saw the corners of his mouth curl up slightly, like a contemptuous smile. That chilling coldness caused many people in the courtroom to shake their heads, shed tears, or leave because they were too emotional. The jury of 12 men and women, mostly local, could not hide their shock when they were shown the evidence at the scene. Images of the metal box in which Lisa had been held, specialized dissection tools with traces of the victim's DNA. Plastic bags containing Daniel's body were recovered from the Pascagoula River. Forensic reports confirmed the time and manner of the victim's death. One juror wept when he heard the forensic expert describe how Daniel's body had been dissected with such precision as if by a professional anatomist or butcher. The prosecution did its job professionally, relying on Lisa's testimony, physical evidence, DNA, data from the scene, and Thomas's strange behavior after his arrest. All of it created an undeniable closed picture. The defense had almost no way back. They tried to point to Thomas's mental health, his abusive childhood, and the pressures of drug-related criminal activity. However, given the brutality and calculation of the crime, all justifications were dismissed. One of the jurors later told the press,
"I thought I had seen a lot of terrible things, but this was the first time I had seen a human being who could do something like this without any emotion. To me, he was no longer human."
On the final day of the trial, a cold March day, the air in the courtroom became suffocatingly quiet as the judge allowed Lisa Carter to stand before the jury to make her final statement. Lisa stepped to the stand, looking frail, but her eyes were filled with determination. Her figure was still thin from months of physical and mental treatment, but her voice, though trembling, echoed throughout the room, making each person present listen. Lisa began, looking toward the jury.
"I never thought I would survive to stand here. I was in the dark, in a cold, closed metal box, with no light, no sound, no water, no life. I heard his footsteps, the sound of the lock being unlocked, and his steady breathing, and I knew that each time he came, it would be a physical or mental torture. I thought I died 100 times during those days."
Lisa paused for a few seconds to catch her breath. Many in the room were in tears. A woman on the jury gently removed her glasses to wipe away a tear that was welling up.
"He killed Daniel right in front of me, the man I loved. He not only took his life, but he took my soul in the days that followed. But I am here today, for Daniel and for me."
Lisa turned to look straight at Thomas, who sat coldly at the defendant's table, still expressionless.
"You can put me in a box. You can threaten to kill me, but you can't kill or believe that justice will come. And today, I want everyone to know, I'm no longer a victim. I am a survivor."
The courtroom was silent. No one applauded, no one spoke, but the silence was a testament to the weight of what Lisa had just said. The judge nodded in appreciation, and one of the jurors whispered,
"She's the reason we have to do the right thing."
Lisa left the witness stand in great emotion. She didn't need any cheers. Her words were deeply engraved in the hearts of everyone present. After days of intense debate, cross-examination, witnesses, forensic evidence, and testimony from Lisa Carter, the sole survivor, the jury took less than 4 hours to reach its verdict. The brutality, inhumanity, and premeditation of the defendant's actions left no room for doubt. The courtroom was packed on the afternoon of the sentencing. Local and national press were present. The air was filled as the judge entered and asked everyone to stand. After everyone was seated, the court clerk read the unanimous verdict of the jury.
"We, the jury, upon the evidence and testimony presented, find the defendant guilty of first-degree murder, kidnapping, torture, destruction of a body, and false imprisonment. All counts were premeditated, and extremely serious."
The judge, after a pause to ensure silence, continued to pronounce the sentence.
The defendant is sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Given the degree of cruelty, inhumanity, and lack of remorse, the court has imposed the maximum sentence under Mississippi law. There has been no apology or remorse expressed by the defendant, and his actions are a great danger to society. He does not deserve the opportunity to return to his community.
As the sentence was read, Thomas remained expressionless. Not panicked, not angry, just silently bowed his head, his hands clasped on the table. Some say it was the first time he had truly been afraid, but no one knows for sure. In the audience, Lisa Carter quietly shed tears, not out of hatred but out of relief, knowing that after so many days and nights of haunting, she knew that Daniel had been given justice and she could start her life over. As Thomas was led out of the courtroom, a member of the jury whispered,
"No one can bring Daniel back, but at least the devil is chained forever."
The butcher's box case, as the media called it, not only shocked the residents of Mississippi, but also spread throughout the United States in the late 1990s. The brutality, cold calculation, and inhumanity of Thomas Reed's actions made this case one of the most gruesome crimes in the state's modern history. But more than a murder case, this is the story of the miraculous survival of a woman, Lisa Carter, who not only fought to keep her life in unimaginable conditions, but also had the courage to stand before justice, becoming a key witness to disrupt the entire cruel murder plan. Immediately after the case was widely announced, a series of major newspapers, such as the New York Times, the Washington Post, USA Today, etc., reported extensively on the incident. The media not only focused on the criminal aspect, but also deeply portrayed Lisa Carter's journey of survival and persistent fighting spirit. The case was referred to as the butcher's box, referring to the exact location where Lisa was held, a giant, sealed metal freezer with no light, no food, and no air circulation. During the days locked inside, Lisa was left with only her survival instincts, memories of her family, and a belief that she had to survive to tell the truth. Years later, the case continued to be revisited in a famous crime investigation documentary series. Among them, the show Shattered, Investigation Discovery, devoted an entire episode titled The Box, recreating Lisa's terrifying journey from the time she was kidnapped to when she was found exhausted at a gas station. The popular podcast Crimes Closets also analyzed the case in detail, focusing on the psychological perspective of the victim and the meticulous investigation process of the police. Audiences everywhere were captivated by the vivid details, such as Lisa's desperate attempts to scream inside the box, the brutal beatings she endured, and her moment of escape when she was just hours away from death from dehydration and lack of oxygen. After the case, Lisa became a symbol of mental strength. She did not choose to hide or stay away from the public like many other victims, but actively shared her story at violence and kidnapping prevention seminars. She once spoke at a conference on personal safety.
If I had not survived, you would have won forever. I have to live to tell this story, not only for myself, but for all those who have been hurt and cannot speak.
Lisa Carter continues to collaborate with many nonprofit organizations, including projects that help women who have been victims of domestic violence, false imprisonment, or physical abuse. She also participates in campaigns to lobby for laws to tighten regulations for people with a history of violence or disordered behavior, like Thomas Reed. The butcher's box case left a strong mark on the history of American criminal justice, not only because of its brutality, but also because it shows that crimes can happen in the most ordinary homes with people the victims once trusted. Thanks to the efforts of the authorities, the media, and Lisa's extraordinary courage, the truth was brought to light, justice was served, and society learned a lesson about vigilance, about the fighting spirit, and about the indomitable strength of humans in the face of the darkness of evil. Thank you for joining us today. If you enjoyed this story and want to dive deeper into more intriguing mysteries, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update.